Meanwhile, what are those Idaho lawmakers who made that law? What are they up to today here in Idaho? Well, they were supposed to be talking about starting a program to train school staff to identify students who could potentially commit violence on school grounds. But that hearing was postponed. Aspen Shumpert, though, you were able to talk to Representative Marco Erickson about this, who is sponsoring this bill. Just kind of get an idea what he's trying to do with this. First, explain why that meeting or that hearing was postponed.
Yeah, and this is an idea that has actually been in the works for several years between school districts and prosecuting attorneys. And so Erickson was actually making this come to life and says there was a little bit of work to get into when it comes to prevention work. He says after an active shooter incident in an eastern Idaho school, which led to lawsuits that are still playing out in court, there were some work to do, including offering some legal immunity, which I'll get to in a second. But essentially, the bill would allow the state to continue offering prevention training and provide newly defined teams in schools who would take the training with legal immunity. The training's technical name is Behavior Threat Assessment and Management, or BTAM, which helps people identify potential concerns or violent acts and provide strategies to manage these scenarios. The teams that are assessing behaviors would be made up of school staff, school resource officers, nurses, or mental health specialists, to just name a few. It also allows for outside of school members to be on the team too, like Department of Health and Welfare or advocacy groups to step in when needed.
Well, let's say they brought a weapon to school, like a knife, and it was against school policy. So they would recognize that they brought a knife. They would assess the threat. Was there a threat, or was that just an accidental thing, or was that a hunting trip they took over the weekend?
The bill also has a clause in it that would give districts who follow this BTAM model some immunity when it comes to potentially getting sued. Erickson says as long as they're following the protocols, if there was an incident that still occurred, then no BTAM team could be sued. Erickson describes this as a little dangling carrot for districts to consider.
It's a good way to incentivize somebody to do it without having to force anyone to do it, right? So they could still opt out and not do it if they don't want to, but they do put themselves a little bit more at risk.
Again, this bill did not get its hearing today. Erickson says they'll either tweak some of the words and maybe reintroduce the bill, or it may come back as an entirely different bill with the same intentions, just slightly different words. Brian, we're going to continue to keep a lookout for that. He said that could be sometime next week. We don't know a defined date as of right now.
Still too many questions about what he was going to bring forward, so he's going to work it a little bit. Okay, my first thought is, what about smaller schools? I mean, teachers are already overwhelmed with all the responsibilities in some of these smaller schools. Now they may have to consider like how to assess somebody's psychological behavior.
Right, and I do want to mention that the State Board of Education already provides this training in their safety school and security program, so it's not a new training, but now there's a little more incentive to maybe consider doing it now that lawmakers think it might be able to reduce the likelihood of an incident happening.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, Aspen.